Let's jump to this story from the Post Millennial.
Hey, that's us.
That's you. Who wrote this? There's no byline. Come on,
no
Libby. What's
byline.
going on?
I know who wrote that, but I won't tell you.
It says Tucker Carlson overtakes Joe
didn't put
Rogan
their
on
name
Spotify, now the #1 podcast in America. Look at that shocked Joe Rogan face. He can't believe it. Tucker's bigger than him. I do think that likely Joe will jump back into the #1 slot in the next couple of weeks or so. But this just does show that Tucker is biting at his heels. He's getting up there. And more importantly, how white-pilling is it that the top 2 podcasts are truth tellers?
I saw your post about that. I think that's pretty cool. And Tucker has been killing it lately. He had 2 really. I mostly watch his
Jack
interviews.
Posobiec.
Jack Posobiec's interview was great. And he had an interview recently with Matt Taibbi that was also really great.
I saw that,
yeah, that was really fascinating.
And you
Both
have to
of those
look,
were fascinating.
He rebuilt this entirely by himself. Like, there's no mainstream media support. This was him
He
and
is
his
like Public
team.
Square, I think.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
his
Like, he
support
put this together. This isn't like a Fox backup or anything like that. And you know Fox is like rolling over right now.
And it took a little bit of time for him to hit his stride. Like, at first it seemed good, and then it was kind of like, what's going on? And now the interviews are really good.
Has it been close to a year?
Almost.
Okay, yeah.
Has it been almost a year?
I think almost a year at this point.
One of my favorite Tucker stories, he was supposed to come to Alabama for a fundraiser the Monday after he got fired. And I remember seeing the break. I was driving from a campaign event, and I was like, oh, he's not coming anymore. And, like, totally would have understood. Like, you just got fired from your job. Like, you're not still coming. And he still came. And it was his first public event, and we were supposed to have a little meeting beforehand. And so I'm waiting downstairs, and he comes in, and you know him, and he's like orange.
I don't know.
Suntan.
I never met him.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, he's like orange suntan, and it's not what he normally looks like. And I was like, well, what happened to you? And he was like, again, everybody around was like, oh, like, if he's a little upset, like, he got fired 2 days ago, like, expect that. Like, just kind of rolled the punches. He walks in doing the cackle, completely burnt orange. I was like, what happened? I've been fishing every day, golfing every afternoon, just living my best life. And I was like, I love this. Like, again, this is somebody, that happy warrior that just picks up and keeps going.
And I think
worked.
Fox News needed him more than they realized.
Absolutely.
In fact, they needed him more than he really needed them.
But wasn't it sort of about the Dominion lawsuit,
Yes.
getting him out of there so that they didn't have to fork over even more cash to Dominion?
I mean, that was an interesting calculation on their part, right? That they could continue on at the level without Tucker Carlson, and that they could lose him and he wouldn't become a competitor somewhere else. I mean, he could have gone to Newsmax, right? I mean, I think it's better that he's independent, but he was a talent that they had exclusive rights to, and they decided it was worth letting him go. And I think that must have been a miscalculation. I don't know how much money they would have owed Dominion.
And you look at the views on, you were saying those specific interviews, you look at the views on like each individual post, which obviously, Elon letting him post that long, like, is incredible. That's hundreds of millions of viewers, as opposed to he did have the #1 show, but this is a lot more. And again, if
I don't know how that all works.
Yeah,
but,
this is great.
But yeah, I have enjoyed some of the recent interviews quite a bit. Oh, he also had a great one with Catherine Herridge.
Oh, cool.
That was a fascinating interview
was she the
too.
CBS reporter that got fired?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
But then,
One great
as
interview,
much
but
as
I won't mention it.
as much as I said it was good that the top 2 podcasts are truth tellers, the third biggest podcast is Call Her Daddy.
What's that?
It's like a girls podcast that was really like
Barstool?
raunchy back in the day, and she's become kind of a mainstream influencer.
Is it still raunchy?
I've never really listened to it. I know she got married recently. I mean, it's gone from being this like dating podcast, I think, to really becoming like kind of all around female influencer.
Well, you look at the kind of content that men listen to, and it's Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, and the kind of content that women listen to is less, I don't know what the right word is.
I can tell you what I listen to.
Studious.
It's none of this stuff.
Well, true crime is big.
True crime
I
is big,
listen
and it has
to
a
Tucker.
dominant female
I listen
audience.
to Jack and Charlie. I listen to this show.
But those are male-dominated shows.
And then I listen to like Spooked, just like ghost stories.
Oh yeah, I love the ghost story ones.
And I listen to Honestly with Barry Weiss.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Those
I
are
remember.
mostly what I listen to.
But these are still male-dominated. So like news and politics and culture is like 80% male audiences.
Even culture is 80% male.
Yep, and the female podcasts are like sex and dating,
I
and
don't
true
listen
crime.
to I don't like true crime because it's always like some child was bludgeoned to death, and you're like,
Yep.
Those are a lot of
don't
true
want,
crime.
I think-
don't want.
And I think like on TV, the big shows for men are like Married to Strangers.
What's that?
You know what that is, right? watch
it's
it.
Married at First Sight is what you're talking about, right?
But there's like 12 shows. Just,
There's
I mean,
hundreds
it's not
of them.
Star Trek
Married
and
to
Red Letter
Strangers.
Media.
Turns out we're not watching whatever the what is it called? I can't even make The Mandalorian. That's the Star Wars.
There
one.
you go.
No, I mean, I think fundamentally
There's
the
like 10
differences
more.
in what they're interested in is speaks to the fact that their brains are fundamentally different, right? It's not that women can't be interested in politics and men can't be looking for dating advice, but generally the anthropological, emotional, that kind of stuff is often something women are interested in, like. For true crime, I hear this with women all the time, like, why does this happen? How do we get here, right? Yeah. And men are often more interested in slightly different information. I can understand where it's like, this is happening now or whatever it is. That's the reality of culture. And that's why I worry for a culture that only becomes politically driven. I think that we have to have lots of different things that
We are in trouble with that right now. I mean, that is an issue. There's politics in everything. There's politics in all of our different art forms too. Like, I used to be really interested in modern art, and I still like modern art, but like, I really like Brancusi, the sculptor, and whatever else. But I used to really only like contemporary art. And then it's only within like the past 5 or 10 years that I've started getting a lot more interested, even less, like more like 5-6 years, a lot more interested in the classical arts, including like painting that's like representational painting, the religious stuff from not even the Renaissance necessarily, but like, which I like, but the Middle Ages, because there's so much sincerity in it, and there's so much sort of like a hope and wishing in it, and all of these beautiful mother and child, like the Madonna and child ones. I love that. But you don't see contemporary art forms and entertainments that are not infused with politics.
That's a good point. And like we said earlier, like it's shoved in your face.
It's
and
shoved
you're
in your
brought
face.
into politics
And
constantly.
isn't part of that have to do with the fact that we've let religion to slip into such huge decline?
Absolutely.
And religion is somewhere that we see the beautiful things.
Yeah.
You know, it's when you look to God and you look to the heavens that you think like, oh, what beautiful sky, what beautiful trees, what a beautiful thing mankind is. What beautiful things we are to each other. And we don't see that even half as much as we used to, because we don't value the beauty of it. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like mankind was created in God's image, right? That's what we learn in Genesis. Mankind was created in God's image. But as we move away from God, we move away from the beautiful, because God created us to be beautiful, just like him, you know, as best we can. God created us to be beautiful. And as we let go of God, it's almost like we're flipping God off by saying, and now we're going to be ugly.
Yeah.
We don't want to be beautiful like you. And I think that's a real tragedy.
Yeah. And I think we see this, you know, as our culture becomes more atheist, more agnostic, we see this in all kinds of things. I mean, when we were in Milwaukee, I was in love with the Milwaukee Public Library that was down the street from the RNC convention, right? It's gorgeous. It's beautiful architecture. I mean, a lot of
gorgeous.
The art and creativity isn't just painting and writing and fiction and movies and plays and stuff like that. Like that's obviously integral. And I think people who are passionate about it should pursue it, but it's also like the architecture we put out. I mean, you know, when I lived in Dallas, they were throwing up apartment buildings really quickly because people moving there, but it didn't look like the historic, you know, buildings that were created in a lot of major cities. We forget regional architecture in our rush to kind of put up whatever. And you'll see this with, you know, kind of the brutalist architecture. There are so many things that we could pour beauty into that, you know, whether intentional or not, whether it's because we don't like beauty, we are kind of rejecting it, or because we're in a rush to sort of get things done as cheaply and quickly as possible, we aren't investing into it. Either way, you know, we are losing something that was so important to a society for so long. And I think that's terrible.
And to your point about faith earlier, when I was writing the book, I went back and forth with my publishing team. The middle section of the book is called the modern day F words, and it's faith, family, and freedom. And they're like, you can't call it the modern day F words.
I like that.
Thank you. And I was like, that's the cornerstone of America. Like the founding fathers
Never
sat
listen
down.
to your publisher.
Yeah, well, and it worked, you know. But we put that together and still put it out, and that's been everybody's favorite chapter every time we talk to people, because it's true. Faith, family, freedom are constantly attacked by the left. It was the cornerstone of America, and the left knew when they attacked that, they attacked all of America, and it was this kind of thing. And we constantly see these polls that are thrown in the media, you know, every few weeks that Gen Z, doesn't like America, doesn't see the beauty of America, don't have hope in America. And it's because we're constantly told how bad it is, and we don't view it as this, this is a God-sent thing. Like, this is this opportunity of this great experiment that obviously stood the test of time for 248 years. But not to sound like Kamala Harris, but when you don't step back and look at the context of it, without a
So she
coconut
is getting
tree,
to you. You admit it.
when you listen to it, you just look at all of it, like everything around you, you're like, wow, like it is pretty cool that America's here this long. You look at the contemporary art, but they don't want us to do that. They don't want us to look at the classical stuff. It's just the news cycle's bad. Look right in front of you. Look how bad the fear-mongering is. Let's scare you some more, get you to vote.
Hate yourself.
Yes,
Cut
that's
off
all
your
it
boobs.
is. Yes,
Yeah.
which is terrifying.
I wonder what the shift was that made politics pop culture, or vice versa. I think it may have to do.
It had to have been
It
Trump.
was well, but it was so in 2008 we started seeing media companies making money off getting political because rage drove traffic. But I think it was also a strategy from Democrats predominantly trying to figure out how to capitalize younger voters in 2008, 2012, and they were like, so let's attack social media where young people are, and then this created a generation of people who are like, politics is pop culture.
Mm-hmm. And I think for Gen Z, I really briefly worked at a school, not as a teacher, just kind of administration and staff. And I remember that there was sort of a praise for the students who would take on activism. And it was an all-girls school, and it was very, I think just generally progressive. But there was a desire to sort of show that your youth was politically engaged in a correct way. And to the detriment to critical thinking and expression, because I think there are a lot of young people who are looking for validations from their teachers and their parents. Yes. And if they're signaled like, oh, well, we think it's cool that you're so precocious and want you to talk about these issues and whatever else. I mean, you see this often with young children who are brought to testify before state government when they have these bills banning transgender, medical interference laws, and they'll bring out these young, I would say, very confused people whose parents are probably like, "Wow, you're changing everyone's life. You're doing so great," and they crave affirmation, which is super normal. That's how kids are, and it's sort of confusing being mature and interesting with taking on and parroting the views of someone else.
Oh, yeah. And you mentioned 2008. They claim, 2008 was the first Twitter election when that, everything became on social media. I think 24 is going to be the first TikTok election where it's like, and Trump and I talked about this, where you can put a 15-second video out for free, and right now he's getting at least 200 million views on each video for free, as opposed to spending hundreds of $millions on like a 30-second ad that
I don't believe it's
people
real.
aren't watching cable.
I think
You
it's
don't
fake.
think the views are real?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
On TikTok? How come?
Just industry stuff. So I'll just put it this way: I've met people who let's phrase it like this: selling advertisements, selling sponsorship. We do this all the time, and we'll go to a sponsor and we'll say we can get X amount of views, and they will tell us we are not interested in TikTok and a couple other platforms who I will not mention because it's a waste of money. And the issue is, so the one thing we hear about like YouTube sponsorships is they're like, I can't believe how well the ad performed when we sponsor your show. It's incredible. And I'm like, yeah, because we have a lot of people who are watching. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, but we sponsor other shows of comparable views and nobody buys stuff. And I'm like, because the views probably aren't real. Because they'll say my podcast gets X amount of views, and that's not correct. And so I could be wrong about TikTok. Yeah. What I can say is that they don't convert. And so we don't prioritize it all that heavily because it's hard to actually capitalize.
Sure. I haven't heard that yet. That's a good point.
Yeah, there's a couple other platforms I won't mention. I'm not 100% on TikTok. I don't know exactly what's going on their platform. It's fine, whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying my opinion. We've talked to sponsors and said, we only do sales really on the audio versions. So you can, for everyone listening, we're on iTunes and Spotify as well. People are like, hey, the show's not on YouTube. What do I do? It's on iTunes and Spotify. It's on every podcast platform, by the way. But they'll come to us and they'll say, we take all our metrics from every platform. We show them to the sponsors. We have like a deck, and we'll be like, look what we can do for you. And we're very, very, very particular. That's why we almost never have any sponsors. On the podcast version, I think we have like 4 or 5. Because I'll just outright be like, not reading that, won't do that. You get a lot of sponsors that are like, will you say that our underwear is the best underwear you've ever tried? And I'm like, if I try it and I think it's the best underwear I've ever tried. And they go, really?
You mean you're not like buying? You're not going to read a teleprompter, whatever they put in front of you. You're just not going to say.
I will tell you this: it's all fake. I know some people who have big endorsement deals, and they outright say like, "I never wore those shorts before." Huh. And they're like,
really? That's
100%.
I mean, I believe it, but that sucks. I like when Happy Gilmore when he
sandwiches,
starts the Subway.
Yeah.
Sandwiches.
But my point ultimately is, when we were recently negotiating with someone and they said we want to buy X amount of ad reads or whatever, and I was like, well, I don't know if we could do it. What if we did this instead on these platforms? And they were like, not interested. And I said, why not these platforms? And they said, because they never convert and we waste our money. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.